I get so much feedback from my audience whenever I do Q&As or just people are DMing me and they ask how to get rid of nasolabial folds. It's such a hyper insecurity
100%.
for women. And I don't know if that's because we're seeing everybody filtered where they just do kind of look more flat. And I think that that has kind of seeped into our psyche. We've forgotten what real people look like. But
it's a really good question. And you're 100% correct. When I stopped doing nasolabial folds, this was in 2015. And people thought I was a crazy person because the industry as a whole still did them. It was a who's who of who could do them the best. After I did them for about a month, I said, the person was so happy they were tearful that the line was gone. But then when I took the step back, I'm like, but they don't look better, right? Their line is gone, but objectively they're not more or attractive. You could argue they were less. And I think of it, and this is where it's hard to be an aesthetic practitioner sometimes, is we need to not, I tell my patients I hear really well, but I don't listen very well. Because I'm going to hear their complaint and I'm going to translate that into what the actual problem is. And, there are plenty of places that we are really aging and there is real volume being lost that can be restored. And even with filler that might migrate or whatever, and still have no long-term consequences and a fantastic look. But this is the symptoms of aging. So I always say, if you just took a little snapshot of the corner of your mouth and you looked at us at 29, 39, 49, it gradually turns down little by little. These gradually get deeper. And so if I'm looking at a mirror and I'm looking at myself because we can't judge ourselves well, I know that I don't want to age, right, in general. And so anything that I can see as a hint that I'm aging makes me stressed. So you're completely right. It's even worse now with filters because now you can age and still not have the evidence of aging, which makes no sense. And so you're right. And I would say it's just like if you go to the emergency room with a cough. If they just give you a cough drop every time, they're not a very good physician. They should be smart enough to say, okay, the cough means that you're aging here. Right? So the chin getting these lines here means the
which
chin.
lines?
The horizontal ones here.
Oh, I have a huge, do you mean this indentation?
That one that we all get, salvus,
Okay.
means this bone goes away.
Oh, God.
And the nice thing is finally we have solutions for most of them. And I always say, I would tell patients that there's an answer for this thing, right? I don't have it. The industry doesn't have it yet. So I'm not going to do it because there's no good answer. Now we're getting to a point where there's a good answer for most things. But if I were to number them, right? Number of aging first to last, most important. Number one is temple aging. That's the number one volume aging on the whole face. There's probably more volume lost in the temple alone than... Sorry.
How are my temples?
Good.
Not too concave?
Not too concave.
Okay, we'll cover them back.
It's the number one. Number two is here. Most people don't notice that we lose probably a full inch of bone over our life there. And you see that when I was in my training, we would fix facial fractures. And so when you'd fix a bone like this, the mandible, in a 20-year-old, the bone's really tall. You can put plates on it, you can fix it, perfect. If an 80-year-old fell and came in, there's not enough room to put a plate. The whole bone is gone.
Wow.
And so I think if we just undo what's going away, you can look natural. But you're getting back to the point that you mentioned is people hyperfixate on what tells them that they're aging.
Yeah.
Because they don't see the big picture in themselves.
And I think a problem with that is that so many people will go in with their hyperfixation that may not be the actual thing that is causing them to look the way that they don't want to look. And they go to a provider who isn't educated or trained enough, or the way that they practice is they just say, okay, great. You feel like your cheeks are not full enough, even though it may be a temple thing and a lower face thing. And 100%. They just put a bunch of cheek filler in. And then that's how you end up looking really distorted, right?
100% right. It couldn't be more accurate. In my opinion, I would hope that would have gotten better in the last decade, and I'm not sure it has. I think the industry has gotten smarter into having a cheek indication when before it didn't. Now, recently, you can treat temples on label. But every time we get a new area, just like cheeks, they get so overdone because people get excited about it that pretty soon we all look like Maleficent, right? We see plenty of that walking around. And you'll know this from social media. People often ask me, this is a 20-year-old attractive woman. Why do they look 40 or 50 or 60?
Yeah.
And our eyes are smart, right? You can't trick our eyes. Even if you're not sophisticated enough from a training perspective to know how to name the filler or the area or whatever, your eyes know something's wrong. And anytime we have a discrepancy that we see between our temples and our cheeks, our cheekbones, our eyes tell us that's older. And so when we build these crazy cheeks on 25-year-olds, and then we see a big concavity here and a big protuberance here, the only logical thing your mind can see is age. And so we see these, and then we see these people who don't look quite right. They've been super feminine, beautiful faces with very masculine mid-face. It's a contrast. Our mind's like, I don't know what's wrong, but something is.
Interesting. So how do people go about getting these treatments then, or vetting? Does it come down to vetting the provider?
That's a really hard question because I wish it had an easier answer. And I'll just give you a quick story. I had a patient who've been seeing me for a while. Generally okay with the idea, right? It's always a negotiation, and it's always an education as to, I don't like this line, and I'm going to trust you that this is better, right? And there's some level of trust and confidence that you have to have in the provider to be able to do that. Because people feel the pressure to be educated, right? There are a lot of consumers of your podcast, lots of consumers of this beauty industry knowledge. And I think it's because people are enthusiastic or passionate about it, but I also think they're afraid. They want to do it right. They want to do it. They want to do it right. They want to know how. They want to not make mistakes. And I think I think it's justified. It's 100% valid. I think that if I were to tell a family member in a city that I don't know to go out and get there, I would say 50-50 whether they're going to get treated right. But my patient who trusted me, who I'd been seeing for a long time, she's like, okay, I know I need to do temples, but I don't want to. I really want to do more cheek, and I want to do this line. And so I went through this whole 45-minute education. Let's reevaluate and see. And we look back at pictures. We can see she's making fantastic progress over time. And at the end, she's like, I just don't care anymore. I want this right here, and I just want my cheeks done, and I want this done. And I said, I understand, but I ethically will not do that to you.
And she went to somebody else?
She left in tears, called back cursing and everything, and I suspect she went someplace else. But I think that, how do celebrities end up looking wrong? Right. I believe they go to really sophisticated people, and there are a handful of really good ones. I know you know Ben Soleil.
Yeah, love him.
I know there are I know a handful of them personally well enough to know they do good work consistently, and they probably would tell a celebrity no.
Ben has told me no so many times, by the way.
Yeah. And I think that's right. And the problem is that people don't want that from a customer service perspective.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the instant gratification. When you get it in your mind and you have that self-consciousness or insecurity, you just want what you want, and you want it in that moment. And it's almost like, fuck the consequences down the line. I'll deal with it then. We have this inability to look too far into the future when we just want that thing in that moment.
I'm going to try to summarize a handful of things that they can look for. So, because I know people want practical things they can apply. So I would say you can actually test them. If they'll treat your nasolabial folds as a woman, I wouldn't go there, personally. If they'll treat the marionette lines here without addressing the chin, the gonial angle, or volume up here, I think that it tells me they might be skilled. They might even be famous. They might not have the right eye. And if they don't educate or push back, if you ask for the wrong things, then they might be more interested in just treating anyone rather than saying no occasionally. I say no every day. And I think it's not because I'm intentionally obstructionist. I love doing these treatments. I love doing a lot of these treatments, but I want to minimize how many wrong things people do, because I don't want them to have consequences. I don't want them to say in 5 years or 10 years, I got off track and I don't look the way I wanted to look.